Hello friends, and welcome back to another update on the Unity UI Extensions project. Man, we'll get this recording done tonight. Anyway, so it's been a few months, it's probably been about 6 months or so, and that's allowed the community to really pitch in and start helping out with the project. I've also spent a great deal amount of time with quite a few of the controls as well, trying to tweak them, improve them, cut out a lot of the fluff around it to make them as hardy and as good as they can. So let's have a quick look at what's been going on. So, first notably is the fact that the horizontal and vertical scroll snaps have had a load of work done to them now. They've had some major performance updates and a load of refactoring now to try and make it clear about what does what. It's actually made updating these controls a lot easier. As a last minute update as well, as a comment on YouTube, now also scales with the Rect transform changes. So if you're using a canvas with a change with screen size kind of rotation, then it will work. And also if it scales and it moves, the old control will update itself as it does. Getting that to work with Unity was a right pain, but it all works now. As some of you might have noticed if you've been following us on Twitter or on Facebook, there's now infinite scrolling added to these. This is a hot required update. Many people are asking about it, and it's simply there in case people want or need it. It also allows it to work with a sort of a masking area. You can also apply a mask, and you can even control how much above and below the control that the elements should appear. There's a lot of math involved trying to get that to work around how the control itself works. You've probably seen a lot of other tutorials where people working on a distance from center, but if you're going to do it properly, it can't work like that. You have to work with how the control works and relates. All working, all great. Also with that is that it's also been tweaked now, so it will work with either with prefabs actually in the thing and actually attach them to control, or in the scene as it does today. And both will work either way, but not both together. So you've got to pick an approach which way you're going to do it. You're going to build it in the scene, or you build it in prefabs and then simply keep adding to them. Both ways work programmatically, whether you add them in the scene or add them into the array. Should all do fine. And there's even a new update layout function there, so that if your screen rotation changes or your resolution changes, you can tell the control, right, just update, and it will automatically. Thanks to a lot of the testers who've been working on this, and there's a lot of good feature requests been in there. And we have our first accidental experimental sort of feature. And when I was throwing the control into worldspace and I was using prefabs, it went kind of a bit freaky, but in a good way. Now, to make sure the control still works as is, I did some enhancements to make sure the fact that it would actually draw as it should in worldspace, but I also left the other option in, and I'll show some of that very briefly in the update video here, but also I'll do a new updated video tutorial for most of these controls as soon as I can get time. The HSV picker, which was a sort of initial implementation of a color value change, is now being completely rewritten by Judo4, who originally submitted it. So I'm just I'm recording this very late tonight. He submitted the original HSV, but he's rewritten it, and there's got a new color pick control. It's a lot more better, a lot more robust. And also in there, whether you intend or not, there's actually a brand new box slider control, which I'll go into a bit more of that later. The extensions toggle had a few updates, mainly so you can identify which toggle has been updated, and it has a new event. And in that event, instead of just telling you whether a control is on or off, it'll also give you the ID of that control, and you can decide how that ID works and how that event exposes itself realistically. The TextPic has had some nice quick feature change and slight enhancements by Brad Nelson, and he's basically made it even better. It still doesn't work with animations, because if you need something more serious, then you should be looking at buying something like TextMesh Pro, which is a lot more features in it. This is a nice, simple, very basic implementation just about using pictures in text. And lastly, one of the other controls we've got is the SoftAlpha mask. That's been slightly changed around a bit. Another contributor, Valtame, has made it so that now it only uses a single shader, which is used for both text and for actually for images, and will draw both in a much better way. We've had a rough road trying to get that update in, but the contributors really put it in the end because I was quite harsh about making sure it worked. So there are the feature updates. Well, but obviously it wouldn't be an update without new features as well. So at the last dying minutes, Rahul has submitted a new table layout control. This works similar to the Unity's grid control, but is much more better made for like actually having a table where you're having columns and rows and being able to control the columns and their heights and widths and sizes and things like that. So a lot of things in there. Thomas actually submitted 3 brand new controls. Thank you for that, Thomas. And in that you have an infinite scroll, which allows for an infinitely scrolling ScrollRect, a ScrollRect Occlusion, which does something similar to what I've done in the horizontal and vertical scroll snaps, where it will activate or deactivate items in a ScrollRect based upon what you can see. And last but not least, a nice little great utility where you can actually have apply a tweening scale to almost anything, to text, to images, to give them a little extra effect. Now, none of these work with the other scroll snap controls we have in the project because they have their own implementation of this. But if you have a basic, simple ScrollRect and you want to throw something at it to make it just shine, these will do the job. And again, I'll do a whole video on these specifically for them. We had a few comments back about the existing gradient control. Now that's stayed there, but Brad Nelson has submitted a new one. And this is something you use in the new Unity 5 features, where it's actually got a gradient toolbar now, where you can actually define a gradient and how it looks, and it's made it all work, which is great. There's a new shining effect. Well, that might be a typo in the slide, do apologise. And as I mentioned before, with the new colour picker, it's got a new box slide, and what this gives you is that you have today's traditional sliders, where you can slide across or you can slide up. This gives you both. So it gives you a rect area and a picker where you can actually pick both X and Y values within a single slider. And I thought that was just great, so I've pulled it out and made it into its own control. Now, it's sad news, we have to retire the extended image control at the moment, but only for a while. Gonna have to do some work to get some back, because in Unity 5.4.5.5 it broke. I don't know why it's broke, and I spent about a good hour looking at it. Even though it's using the Unity's own controls for how it builds the actual mesh transform around it, it's just not working. So I didn't have the time to spend on it. If anyone else wants to look out there trying to make it work, great. But for now, it's out of the package and it'll come back at some later date. So, still going on now. One of the big things we've started on, we actually started briefly in the last release, but we didn't really go it. But Nicholas Fentmiller has given me a right good kicking, because basically he said videos are good, lots of things on the site are good, but where's the documentation? And I asked my hand on heart, say that's something I dropped, mainly because of time. But I've started now a whole work of trying to document the entire solution. A lot of controls have had some very basic documentation. It's very, very basic. It's like one-liners, but it's an outline for where it can go. In this release, all of the controls that we've talked about, so the horizontal, vertical scroll snaps, the box slider, the color picker, they're all getting their own updated, brand new documentation. And in this, we have a simple overview, so one line, the list of properties and what they are, an explanation of what they do and best ways to work them, a usage sections of how to sort of put the control into a scene, make best use of it, even little video demos. Now, these will either be sort of little GIFs, or they'll actually be full YouTube video tutorials, which I do separately for most controls. We also make sure the fact that anyone who's actually done this, we make sure they were probably credited, and even links to other related controls, and also more importantly controls that they're not related to. So you'll especially know this in the horizontal and vertical scroll snaps, saying that the other scroll controls that have been added in this release, they're not compatible. I did try them. It just breaks everything, but don't. Anyway, the aim is eventually to get all controls up to this level of documentation. Again, I still ask out if anyone can help. I've already had a few offers of help, and I've got a little bit more on that now, but I'm working as I can. I'm a one-man band, so I'm asking for any kind of help. I have this much time between family, work, and other life, so if you can help, else just be patient as the documentation rolls in. And if there's anything you need specifically documenting now, then ask, please. Okay. So if you're wanting to contribute to the project, which I'm always welcome to anyone to go along and give me a help. For the main project itself, simply fork the project, make any changes. When you do your commit, make sure it's to a new branch. That just makes it easier for when I'm trying to pull merges back into the project. I can see it's something new and separate. If you're committing to the develop branch, it can break the commit tree somewhat, and sometimes I'll have to reject that and take the things in manually. It just means more time, which means less time to do other things. Once you're ready, submit a PR or pull request to the project. I'll review it. I'll probably have a dialogue discussion, make sure it's right, and when it's done, I'll test it, and that'll get on. And there's also a contribution page in the wiki just to help you along what's going on there. Now, if you're wanting to help out with the documentation, slightly different, just because the way Bitbucket works, you'd have an option to clone the wiki to your local drive, make changes to whatever files you want, but to actually then submit it back, I ask that you create an issue. Simply attach the file or files that you want to update. Again, I shall review it, accept, reject, or suggest modifications. In most cases, since you're helping out, I'm just going to pull that in. As long as the spelling, grammar, and the format's right, I'm just going to put it in and then work more on it later. If you're finding the project useful, please donate, either in cash or code. Either currency works for me, just to keep the project alive. And simply because, I've so many different other projects I keep in mind of, so to keep focused on this and keep bringing the awesome extra UI bits to the project, it just helps, and it shows some appreciation for use. I mean, it's not mandatory. If you don't want to, don't. It's just if you can. That's all. So we'll walk on to go now through a few little highlight demos of each of these controls that we're adding into this release and the fixes. So for our first look through, we'll look at the improvements in the horizontal and vertical scroll snaps. Now, just to make note the fact that these are the horizontal and vertical versions here, one for each control, and this is not the actual fixed item scroll or the basic scroll snap. I might return to look at that in another release, but for now it's just these two we're working on. You can see them here in the scene. I've got a vertical and a horizontal. If I play on this, these are a lot more performant. You'll notice the fact that the current page changes even as I scroll now. There are also events on these controls now, so when I'm starting to change, when I end the change, they're finished and settled on a page, or even as the page changes itself, you have events to be able to connect to those and do what you wish. And it works for both horizontal or vertical. As you expect, the next and previous page buttons work as you'd expect. I can also jump to page. Obviously, keen to note here, this is a 0 indexed array, so page 1, the first page, is page 0. You can also see this here, actually, in this new area here that's in there. And if we look also here, I've also got a scroll mask area set up for the vertical scroll map, and this is for the sort of infinite look. So if I look here now and turn off the mask, you can see here that it's only actually showing 3 pages, and the rest are all inactive or disabled, whereas on the horizontal scroll map is there. And if I go here and I go to, so I move this and I can look in the scene. Oops, I have to do a bit quicker. Oh no, there you can see they're actually activating and deactivating. I could put this in 2 sides, but when I was doing tests for the recording, it didn't look too great. Now, one other thing here is obviously that, as I said in the intro, this works both with items in the scene. So these are both ScrollRects I've set up with items in the scene to begin with, and they're all individual. They'll be sized to the size of the actual scroll snap control itself. But if I look at my other demo scene, I actually have another version of the same vertical scroll snap set up, but here I have actually set up prefab, so I've preloaded the array of objects that the controller is going to use, and this is what will be used to actually load in the scene. So if I run this one, I've got a very much different looking view here, and I've controlled what these all are. They're just simply size. Now, a few comments I had around the controls is, I wanted different size for different things. The control will fix the panel, the area that you're going to have what's in the contents, to the area of the scroll mask. So if you need different sizes for different things, then do it within a small container, and then it will only size the container and do all your Rect transforms. One contributor actually sent to me a sample scene, which was great because it was all multi-scened and it was copying items into the array and actually using the full screen, which prompted some fixes here. So this actually will resize now. So if I even change the Rect transform, you'll see that the entire object changes to fit it. I have to turn that scroll back, resize that, and I can change. You can see it will actually resize with the control itself as the game running. That's also useful for if you need to have different resolutions for different things. Anyway, this is the brief walkthrough, and that's it. Now, although one accidental thing I found was if I change this to say a screen space camera, and then I actually rotate this one. Let's do it that way. I'm doing this live in a demo. Is it good? Is it a good idea? Probably not. How's that looking in game view? There we go. So you can see in game view this is now rotated, and it will still work. So hey there. So one of the other things we also added here is if I actually look in the extensions and look in my examples folder, I've got the color picker. Now there's two things here. There's a little sample scene you can look at to see how it would work, and this has two actual elements here. I've got a world space canvas projection, and I got a screen space canvas projection, and you can look at these in here. And when you run this, it gives you a nice little effect, so you can pick it, and you can see also it's got a nice little vent which hooks it. You can hook into from other objects, including 3D objects, and change their render material and the color and the size. You've got to change the saturation, or the alpha, the saturation, the hue, or the RGB colors, and mess around with it. There's also a prefab provided for you here, so if you want to suddenly drop this specific control into the scene, it works. Now I mentioned about the box picker, and this is quite useful because this area here within the actual color picker is the box picker. So this gives you an X and Y values, and as you can see here, each of these elements are changing based upon the position it's in. So it gives you another slider style option. So instead of just a slider left and right or a slider up and down, you can actually have an X and Y value component coming off a selector. If you can find use for that, have fun. So here we can also have a look at the TextPic control, and we've actually got us there as an example, and let's go find that in the scene. And all this really does is it allows you to have images in line with your text. The way you do this is you simply have, it's got my icon list here. I'm going to go and select a nice little text. I'm going to have my little knob texture there. Oops, sorry. Change that size to 1. And there we go. I've got my element 1, and I'm going to give it a sprite. And give it an oops. I'm going to give it a sprite. It says, there we go. Now the key thing to note is the name here is what it is going to look. It's going to look for in the text to do the actual replacement. So I've got a second. Check out, and I've called it my apologies. I should have thought about what I was going to say before I said it, but there we go. You can see here, you can check out the image that's displayed. You can alter how it scales. It will scale with the font size, as you can see, but you might want to check and change how that works. It's a nice simple way of actually putting in text around edges. You know, I mean, so there. So there's that. Space there. So I've got images in my text. Like I said before, if you want something a bit more advanced, or it doesn't meet quite what your needs are, then check out these Text Mesh Pro. It's probably one of the best assets to use out there. I've done several recommendations on it, and that's the TextPic. So one of the newer controls we've got here now is we've actually got the table layout. Now, like any of the other layout controls, it's simply a case of, so I'm going to actually add a canvas in my scene. I'm going to have an empty object, and in that object I've got an array of items. So I'm simply going to put in an image, and I'm going to duplicate that a few times. Now there at the moment, all it is just slapped on it. I could put a horizontal layout, a vertical layout, but this is the new table layout, and what this gives you is several options to choose how you want to lay this out. So do I want 3 columns? So I've now got 3 columns of elements, and I can change the widths of those columns. I can also add spacing in here, so I can see a bit more clearly about how the tables and rows are picked out. I can set a row height, and if I want to, I can also set it to a flexible row height. It's complete control. And also, like everything else, it comes with the standard layout groups option for padding and also alignment. You can also choose which corner it starts drawing from. Now, interesting to note here is that obviously it differs quite a bit from the actual Unity's own built-in grid control, which is just grids, and that resizes a grid within the Rect transform. As you can see here, this simply uses the corner of the Rect transform to actually choose where it's actually going to start drawing from. Now, thanks to Thomas, we've actually got several new other ScrollRect controls. And if I simply go in, let's see, add a canvas, a empty object, there we go. I've got a simple empty object, and again I'm going to put some default items in here. So let's see, just put some images. Now let's just quickly duplicate that, and I'm going to quickly change some of these images colors, just a few of them, just so we can actually show this actually happening. So it's in the third one. Make that blue, green, and lastly black. Now if I then put a vertical layout in here, you can see that's going to nicely stripe it. If I then go and create another empty object here and child that to that, and in here then I'm going to have my ScrollRect. Okay, so I'm going to use my nice little child area, and I'm going to make that my content, so the scroll knows how to work. Obviously if I run that now, then I can actually then scroll these items up and down. Let's make the content bigger. Makes more sense. So let's scroll them up and well, I've got to set to both. What am I doing? Let's just make it vertical. There we go. That one makes more sense. So I can scroll my content up and down. There, off it goes. But if I now go and add on my infinite scroll, okay, and this is simply a very basic script, which all it's going to do is actually going to wrap the children around and actually make it so that there you can see the elements are just looping around inside themselves. If I want to, I can also then go and add on my occlusion scroll, and then what that's also going to do is it's going to hide elements outside of the content, so it's just going to be working within it. Now what this is doing is similar to what we've done in the horizontal and vertical scroll snap, is actually activating and deactivating items around it, so that they're only actually seeing items within the area that's actually the view for the ScrollRect. And lastly, the additional control that Thomas got, so I'm going to get rid of those now. If I can simply go and add a text item, I'm gonna make. I don't know why they changed it to black. I prefer white. Okay, there we go. Let's make this bigger. Oops, not too big because I can't see it. There we go. Now there's my text. Very nice. It's on drawing the screen, but there's no punch to it. So what this additional other component does, my UI Tween Scale, it allows me to actually apply an animation to this text. Actually, it's to the Rect transform and anything within it, and also it works for images. Now I can do this by simply then creating a simple right there. I'm going to add a key, drag it down, and let's make this loop. So this is use the standard curve editor, and I'm going to play in awake, and I was going to loop. And now by using this one simple script, when I run this now, it's actually going to animate that text. Now I could do all this through the animation system and mess around and change, but it's a simple control. It just does it for you, makes it nice and easy, and you can do it how you want. You can have also a different animation curve for the Y's. You can have two animations working off each other. It's a simple little thing, and it's very, very easy. If you just need to, like, highlighting a text, and you can obviously then be able to activate or disable this based upon a state of something. So I'm highlighting over a button, make it bounce, or I'm just, I'm not looping it, it just plays it. When I play it, it plays it once to say, oh look, I've selected there. And if you change options in play, it doesn't save. Note to self. So there we go. So big bounce, and also agree. I mean, some great contributions from some different contributors, as it were. And so the last of the new controls is the new Gradient 2. So if I go and simply add a image to this scene, I can only add new Gradient 2 script. I'll still keep the original because as used, and you can see here this is now using the Unity's gradient editor. So I can add in additional gradients, or I can simply change how this works, and it'll all update. Obviously, you can all do it programmatically because the way it works. There's also gradient presets, and also you can change how it all looks out. You can obviously change the offset to move it around, change it whether it's horizontal or vertical, and also the blend mode. So there's some little things in there just to make it easier, and it just works. Okay, so that was the 1.2 update. Thanks to everyone who's contributed to this release, and I hope to have many more contributions in the future. And also I'll still be working on my own controls. As a sort of a little prelude, I'm also going to be working on a new book, which is unlike the Unity 3D UI Essentials book, which is more of a technical reference of how to make the best of what Unity gives you. This book is more aimed about building controls, what you can learn from them, how you can work with them. There's a lot of interesting little tweaks and things you can learn about how Rect transforms relate to each other, how anchors work with them, and how those are important when you're calculating it, especially in layouts and things like that. So keep an eye out on my page or UI extension page, or even on the Unity 3D UI Essentials page for more updates about that. And if you want to get in on that, then just let me know and go on. If you've got any suggestions for the project, by all means, Bitbucket is your main source of reference, and to log anything there, or on YouTube or anything else. So thank you. This has been the 1.2 update, and I look forward to hearing more from you all in the future. And a happy new year.